Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. Welcome to our Heaven on Earth series. Today's topic is the power of imagination. So I want to refer to a little book that's been around for a long, long time and give you the quote from it. This is the book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It was written in the early 1900s. His quote was, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, he can achieve." Well, Napoleon Hill, in his book Think and Grow Rich, proposed the same focus. And of course, they had lots of evidence to back that up. And I think you have lots of evidence of that too. Now, one of the things that it starts with is when we're talking about mind, what it can conceive. So what it thinks about. So thought is the very first step in the whole manifesting whatever it is that we desire in life. Now, our thoughts can be all kinds of different random things that just flit through our minds. They aren't our thoughts. Typically, a thought doesn't belong to us unless we pay some reasonably close attention to it. So, and you know, as I do, that we can have a zillion random thoughts just floating through our mind at any given time that can be triggered by what we see, what we hear, what somebody says to us, any kind of a visual in front of us. So there's all kinds of triggers where these thoughts will come flitting by. We might feel hungry, and so then the thought of, oh, I want something to eat. So the thoughts are the starting point, and the thoughts can be, depending on how you work with the thoughts, can be used as tools or as weapons, as a foundation for creating your own brand of heaven on earth, or a foundation for living the worst hell you could ever possibly imagine. So how does this come to be then? Well, if we have a thought and then we add some emotion to it, then an image gets created. So if we take some action about adding in an emotion, so let's give a simple example here. So you have this thought, oh, I'd love a soft ice cream cone. So this thought pops into your head. Wouldn't it be nice to have soft ice cream right now? I'm a great fan of soft ice cream, so I have that thought quite often. Now, well, then if I focus on that thought long enough, then, and it's not just fleeting, oh yeah, well, I'm busy right now, and then the idea goes away. But if it sticks in my mind and the thought keeps reoccurring, and I add some emotion to it, I remember the flavor of soft ice cream, the texture of it, how good it feels on a hot summer day. So I add some emotion to that thought, then I get this image of myself having a soft ice cream cone in my hand. And if that is strong enough and I have the ability to make that dream come true, because it's just a dream at that point, it's an image in our minds, it's part of our imagination. And if I put those thoughts along with the feelings, so emotion is energy in motion. So all of a sudden I've created this little energetic flow here. And of course, the next step is, do I take any action or not? Well, if I have the money to pay for a soft ice cream and I have a way to get to the soft ice cream store and purchase one, well, then what I dreamed about, what was once just a little thought, comes into being, and I make it a reality, and there I have my soft ice cream cone. So it's a simple process that we do all the time without even really paying attention to it. Now, how does that work when it becomes, so that's a tool to get something that we want, all right? So that gives us what is a momentary heart's desire. Well, what about when it's used in the opposite way to create something that we don't want in our life? Well, it's as simple as, so for example, I park underground. I live in a safe community, in a safe building, and there's rarely incidents of any kind. So the other night I was coming home. It was late at night, and I'm not usually out on the roads late. So it was about 11:30 on a Saturday night that I pulled into my parking space. And of course the parking garage is empty. There's nobody around. It's very quiet down there. And this thought flitted through my head. Oh, I'm all alone down here. What if somebody had negative intentions towards me? So this thought flitted through my head. Now, if I had allowed that thought if I had attached that thought to some emotion, fear, obviously, so there's some fear started rising about that. And then the images of other scenarios in my head of where I knew of something bad that had happened to somebody in a parkade and so on. If I had allowed that to build, then by the time I got myself to the elevator and then up to my suite, I probably would have done so with a pounding heart, even if nothing happened. And so all of that period of time, if I had allowed my emotions to, especially the negative emotions, to seriously attach to that thought, then it would build and build and build, and then I would suffer. So even though nothing physically happened to me in that time, the suffering that I felt was my own creation. It was out of my imagination. It was in my head. And I'm going, whoa, just a second here. Who's got control over that? Well, I did. I did it. I did it to me. And it's not to say that bad things don't happen, because they do. However, how many of those fears that we carry around with us and think are actually true never really happen? They were in our imagination. And people say, it's just your imagination. You want to take it a little more seriously than that. It's not just your imagination. Thoughts have a lot of power. When we direct them in a certain way. If we don't pay any attention to them, they're just random and they come through and they flit out the other side. And it's just like the breeze blowing across us, thoughts can be like that. They just keep floating by. But if we grab a hold of one and then start paying attention to it and say, what about this thought? And then begin to, well, I really like this thought, or, oh, I don't like this thought. The more attention we pay to it, either positively or negatively, the more the image of that thought begins to come into some kind of reality. And then it can trigger lots of things in us. It can trigger a sense of well-being, and it can also trigger a sense of suffering in us. So I wanted to talk about this today to get you really thinking about the power of your imagination, and also the parameters that you put around it. Now, there's lots of talk about the importance of creating a vision board, for example. Okay, this is what I want in life. And usually it tends to be kind of a lifestyle vision board where you got palm trees for a trip and to somewhere warm and sunny, especially in the midst of a cold winter where I live. And it could be a fancy new car. It could be a new relationship. Doesn't matter. Whatever's on the board, the idea is that, well, if you can dream it. So back to, if you can put it into bring an image to mind. So you put it in your mind. It's a thought that excites you, that interests you, and then you put it in your mind. And then, of course, the physical board on the wall with the pictures is a trigger, so that it brings it to top of mind again. It just pulls it right back up and say, oh yeah, I really want that. And isn't it interesting? I did a vision board a while ago, and I wasn't that keen on doing it, but it was part of a workshop, and so I played along and did it. Well, I had palm trees for a vacation and so on. I think it was January when we did it, and I had no thought of going anywhere necessarily. It was just, yeah, well, yeah, that'd be nice to have, and I didn't pay that much attention to it. But I put the board up on the wall, and every now and again I glance over at it. Well, about 4 months into the year, I looked at this vision board and said, I wonder how many of these things have actually manifested, if any, because I hadn't really felt as though I had paid that much attention to them. Well, I go over the board and I'm pointing at these different pictures or phrases or whatever, and check, I got that one. Check, I got that one. Check, I got that one. Well, I was shocked that in that short space of time, I had actually accomplished probably 40% of the things that were on that vision board. So it began to be more evidence for me that thoughts can become things, that depending on how we seed the ground and the way we do it, that can manifest in a very bold way, whether it's a bold, beautiful way or a bold, horrible way is entirely based on what you put into it, just how you go about that. So for example, I can think of people who live in what I would call victim mode, where they don't believe they have a lot of power in the world. They believe the world is a very unfriendly place. And so they think about that all the time, oh, how terrible things are, and oh, my life is just not working, and I have all these fears. And so there's this constant barrage of information that's negatively based, and of course they watch the news. Well, if that doesn't get you into the doom and gloom category, I don't know what does. And think, oh yeah, well, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and look at all these bad things that are happening. Are they actually happening in that moment to that person right then? No, they're not. But there's this it almost becomes a validation of, well, see, that's why I can't get along. That's why because I don't have any power over what's going on in the world, and the world isn't that friendly to me. It isn't that good to me. And I have lots of evidence stacked up in the way I grew up, or the way I live now, or my situation, or whatever. Well, okay, if that's where you want to live, in that victim mode, and blame the world for all of the ills that befall you, have at her. That's your choice. And I lived there for a while. I just decided I didn't like it. I was fortunate that I came across this As a Man Thinketh information in my 20s, and I began to realize that I had quite a lot more power than I thought I had. I had just not been directing it in the way that served me instead of the way that didn't serve me. So I made a diligent point. I became a disciple of positive thinking and positive energy, and how to shift that around. It took some doing, and every once in a while I fall back into victim mode, but I don't stay there long, because I remember, oh, wait a minute, no, that's not the direction I go anymore. I go this way. I have power, and I think I believe the world is a friendly place. I have lots of evidence in my life that in my world it's very friendly. And so I start shifting into kind of the opposite corner of this. So I think it's entirely possible, certainly it is from my experience, to change not only what we think about, but the way we think about it. Honest questioning becomes part of that process, especially if you think a thought that is highly charged and highly negative, and you go, well, is that really true? And is it true that I have no power? Well, what do I have power over? Well, you might not have power over your circumstances, your immediate circumstances that that are causing you some distress. But you have power nonetheless. You have power to change your focus. You have power to talk to somebody about moving through this. You have power to take action. You have power over your attitude. Well, I can think this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Or I could think, well, this is one thing that's happening to me that I don't like, but I think there's an alternative here. And I can figure that I'm smart enough to figure my way out of this. So we do always have some power. It's just, first of all, realizing that we do, in fact, and then secondly, starting to use that power. Now, there's both the freedom in that, and there's a responsibility too, because it's so many things that I discovered for me anyway, that so many things that happened to me that I didn't like happened because of me doing it to me. I thought my way into that. And so it's very odd. So let me give you one more example before we close on this. When our son was small, my husband and I were struggling financially because there was a recession on in the country and jobs were hard to come by. And we didn't have a whole lot coming in the house. And we didn't in our household have a washer and dryer as part of the unit. So we were taking our laundry out all the time. Well, you know, if you have a little one, well, there's lots of laundry. And I got sick of taking the laundry out or asking friends if I could come and use their washer and dryer. It was just really frustrating for me. So I remember saying to myself at some point, well, come hell or high water, I'm going to have a washer and dryer. So, and it was strong. The emotion on that was strong. So I thought the thought of what I wanted, and I put a lot of emotion into it. I had no idea how that was going to be accomplished. Well, fast forward a few months, and my grandmother, who lived close by, was coming over to our house we were picking her up. She was going to come for Thanksgiving dinner because we were kind of watching out for her while my aunt and uncle were out of town. And I get this panic phone call from a cousin saying that they thought maybe grandma was in some kind of distress. And I thought, well, that's odd because we're supposed to be picking her up shortly. Anyway, we scooted over there. My husband and son and I bailed into the car and off we went. And my grandmother had a porch on the back, a glassed-in porch on the back of the condominium or the duplex that she lived in. And when there was no answer at the door and the doors were locked tight, I ran around to the back to see if I could see her. And there she was in the porch with the phone cord dangling from her finger and the phone off the hook. And it was obvious that she was not conscious. Something was wrong. So we did what was necessary, got her to the hospital, and it turned out that she had gone into some kind of a diabetic unconsciousness or whatever. Well, they brought her around and they were able to sort her out, and she was fine. So when I'm visiting her in the hospital, she's so grateful. She said, Susan, you and your family saved my life. And I said, well, yeah, of course, Grandma. I mean, we did what we could, and here you are, and I'm really grateful for that. And she said, well, I want to do something for you. And I said, well, that's not necessary, Grandma. I mean, you're our family. Of course, we're going to do for you what. She was insistent. Well, the next thing you know, she's ordered us a washer and dryer, brand new washer and dryer that came into our household because she knew we didn't have one, a set. And I'm going, what? And then these two things started to connect themselves. And I thought, okay, it's fine to envision what I want, but I think next time I'm going to leave out the come hell or high water part because this was too stressful. Not that I thought I caused my grandmother's distress or anything like that, but it was just, this was a little too dramatic for me. I thought, no, next time what I decide I want, it's going to be easy peasy. I'm not going to have that level of, come hell or high water kind of emotion attached to it. So you can be determined you just don't need that level of angst to go with it. So that was a huge lesson for me to be careful what I say in what I want, because when I get very adamant about it, I mean, it's to me, I find it's good to, once the imagination creates the picture and you have a sense of, yeah, that's what I want, then you just allow the universe, you surrender that and allow the universe to have it show up in its time in the best way possible for you, either that you've imagined or something even better. And then you co-create with the universe, because I really believe that it is a co-creation. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, was be careful about your thoughts and watch how things unfold. I bet if you go back in your history, you can find plenty of evidence for times when you used your thoughts as weapons against yourself, and you've used your thoughts as tools on your behalf. Well, you get to pick, because your choice, right? That's all we have for today. I wish you an amazing weekend coming up. It's Friday as I record this. Enjoy your time, and remember, you are magnificent. We'll see you again.